Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another exciting edition of FOL Justice Forum on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of FOL Justice Forum, we're going to be looking at two issues or two cases in Liberia. Number one, defendants in a $100 million drug smuggling case have been acquitted. What happened? What are the next steps? What do we do? And President Weah's executive order number 117 saying that all those desiring to contest the 2023 elections should resign before April. That is about 6 months prior to election, although the code of conduct said 1 month. What's going on? With me to discuss all this, I have FOL legal analyst, Councillor Frederick Jayweh. Councillor Jayweh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm happy to be on, and I say hello to all Liberians.
Thank you. Next, we have the CEO and host of 2A Radio TV Network, that is the Africa Actions Network, 2A Radio, that's Anthony James and Jensen. Anthony Jensen, welcome to the show. You are muted, sir.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and I'm glad to be here. And I hope that we'll be able to discuss this issue that you have just raised.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. Focus on Liberia is where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. It's very easy when something happens for us to discuss it, based on our own understanding. But we at FOL always find time to invite seasoned lawyers to weigh in on these issues. Number one, recently, there was a drug bust in Monrovia, $100 million worth of cocaine being confiscated and money seized from those people. They went to court and the court found them not guilty. It means they have to give their money back. A lot of things happen. But let me bring on Councillor Jayweh to lay the case out for us, and then what happened before they were acquitted. Councillor Jayweh.
Thank you, Dennis. This is a very interesting case. It is a case involving drug trafficking and apparently money laundering. The government succeeded. The history of this case is that a container came into the country under the nomenclature or name of one of Abijali, I think one of Abijali companies in Liberia. Supposedly brought in some chicken wing, I think pig feet, and that particular container was containing the 100 million worth of drugs that you just talked about. I understand the American government, the company Abijali and company call on the U.S. government. And the story is that from there, one Liberian and 3 foreign nationals were arrested, indicted, and tried. And at the end of the day, before Criminal Code A, I think Blambo Dixon is in Code A right now. His honor, Blambo Dixon, is in Code A. And after hearing evidence from the government and hearing evidence from the defendant or defendants, the court entered a ruling of not guilty and went ahead to order that the 200,000 United States dollars that were seized from the defendant as a result of the purported crime were ordered returned to the defendant. And lately, I read on Front Page Africa that the Minister of Justice is not happy. Minister Frederick is not happy, and said a lot of things. I think he wrote a press release and said a lot of things that, and then currently, as we speak, the minister is proposing that the defendants that were acquitted by Code A the national security of Liberia is looking for them to rearrest them. And I also understand that the minister has said that the government of Liberia will be announcing or has announced appeal, and with this matter will travel to the Supreme Court. Several legal issues. I just gave on the facts, brief as they say in law school.
Thank you, Councillor. Let me go to Anthony Jensen. Also, Anthony, we learned that this was a trial decided by the jury. Explain to us, what that looked like. This jury trial in Liberia, and what it looks like, and how they came up to that verdict.
Well, there are always 12-man jury in this case. There were 12, and my understanding is that 11 acquitted the defendants. But besides that, let me say a few words. The government of Liberia should have looked at that case very seriously and should have deployed all necessary means so that the image of the country wouldn't be damaged as a result of that case. By that, there are international laws on drug trafficking. There are concerns from international partners that are close to the capital of Monrovia, and those persons have vested interest in making sure that Liberia becomes drug-free. Having said those, I think, in my view, the government, to even hear that the 4 men have already absconded the country, that coming from the Justice Minister's own mouth, and they don't know the whereabouts of these persons, concerns that surround this case.
Jason, before you go forward, you say absconded. They left the country because they are acquitted, so they are free to move.
The word free is what I'm coming to.
Okay.
100 million worth of drugs is significant to damage the image of Liberia and damage the image of Liberians, no matter where they find themselves. Besides that trial, in my view, there are international laws that the Justice Ministry should. Now, I'm not a lawyer in that case, but I think Justice Musa Dean knows that this is not an issue that only borders Liberia. This is a situation that borders international concerns. So assuming we have ECOWAS court right there, assuming that someone will say, well, because the court acquitted them, meaning they are free to go anywhere. With that being said, it is important that those individuals will still be in the bailiwick. Besides the case, the Justice Ministry or the security apparatus of that country, they should know who should leave Liberia and who should come in Liberia. And they should have proper travel documents to leave the country. So let us assume the Justice Ministry is still strategizing as to how to proceed with that case, despite the verdict. I would think they will be talking with international partners to be raising all of the necessary issues so that the image of that country is not left alone to go be in the mud where you must say the person, that Liberian, they're always involved in drugs. You must say, we know that very well. You're passing somewhere, people say, that drugs, what country are you from? I'm from Liberia. Liberia, oh, wow. That's the situation we're talking about here. Now, with the verdict, someone will say, well, besides the court, when the court decides, we can't do anything otherwise.
Right.
But like Councillor Jayweh said, there's an appeal in the case already before the Supreme Court. If that pattern is there, those individuals should still be in the country, because even I'm reading from the papers that they asked the government to refund some $200,000 to be given to this person, to those individuals, the defendants. So assuming that these guys, even the government is still owing them, let us assume that is the situation. I'm saying assuming because for me personally, I feel that's a case that the government herself, before even going for trial, they should look at this thing from the very holistic point. When something, there are a few things I want to discuss here. The first in the government, there are government apparatus, there are ways in which people should handle matters. The executive, the three branches of government, there is a what they call coordination. They should have had all of the necessary information to coordinate this activity because they should have known that that would have damaged the image of the country.
Right.
Right?
Before we go further, I want us to look at the case itself and really what happened and why a non-guilty verdict was passed. Because from from talking with you guys, the court looked for evidence. So if you, the prosecutor, you don't present what the court looking for, maybe. So let's start with the case. Really, what happened? What were the? I don't know if you had time to.
I have some little information, right? And I may not have all the detail because I'm not in Liberia.
Okay.
But some of us are still investigating. There were drugs found at the free port of Monrovia in a container. And this container was at a free port, and I think my understanding is that the container was not even. I think those agents at the free port.
You muted yourself. Unmute, please. Anthony Jensen, you muted yourself. Please unmute.
Yeah, I'm saying that there was a container that was found at the free port of Monrovia. And that container, the agent at the free port of Monrovia were still holding onto the container. And that a communication came from the boss of the LRA.
Okay.
How you call this fellow? Thomas Doe 9.
But what would
Thomas
be the reason for the acquittal? Would they say no evidence or no drug
you
there?
Are saying, you asked me to give some facts that I understand the case to be, right?
Okay.
So when Thomas Doe 9 wrote the communication to the Freeport Authority, on the basis of that, the continuum was released. That's my understanding. Assuming that is true, the communication is one of those pieces of evidence that went before the court. Now, from what I'm understanding from the Justice Minister, he said that there was sufficient evidence and that they believe that the court did not act properly in adjudicating this case, and that the jury, he's saying that the jury, there's a continuous problem of jury tampering. That's what the Justice Minister is saying. Now, the verdict has been, Blambo Dixon has brought down his verdict the jurors have come down with a verdict, and Blambo Dixon has upheld the decision. So the Justice Ministry is having problem with the verdict that has come down. Now, the question that you myself will be asking is what happened next with all of this information we are gathering. That's what my position as a person is, that the Justice Ministry, as the security arm of the country, and as a lawyer, he has, at this point, to strategize to ensure and deploy all necessary opportunities so that this matter cannot go the way it's proceeding. Now, if the verdict is being upheld in the court below, there's still an opportunity for the Justice Ministry or the prosecuting team to go before the Supreme Court and present their case so that this matter can be relooked at in a very serious matter.
Thank you. Councillor Jayweh, do we know what was the basis of the not guilty verdict? On mute, please.
Are two things that need to be understood here, maybe 3 or 4. One, was there a trial conducted with the state producing its witnesses, documentations, and everything else to convict the defendant in this trial? And after doing that, did the state rest in total? In law, in the practice of law, resting in total means you are not producing any more oral evidence or written evidence. Then it comes to the defendant. The lawyers for the defendant will put witnesses on the stand, which is a trial process. And they will also adduce evidence, oral as well as written. And then the court will set a day for final argument in the case. After the final argument, the court will instruct the jury to return to the room of deliberation having heard all of the facts, the documents available, they should now go into the room of deliberation and return a verdict as they see fit, meaning that they think the law and the facts are on the side of the government of Liberia, and therefore return a verdict that will say guilty against the defendant, or return a verdict of not guilty if the members of the jury think that the verdict, that the facts and the evidence produced by the state is so minute that the defendants in question are to be declared not guilty. So all the jurors, or there are 12 members of the jury, will go ahead and vote. In this case, they went ahead after going to the room of deliberation. They voted. They returned to the court with a verdict of not guilty. Now, once that verdict is returned, and the verdict, the members of the jury will be pulled, meaning the court will ask them one by one, is this your verdict? Yes. Is this your verdict? Yes. Up until you complete the 12 of them. And then the court will discharge the jury with thanks, thanking the jury for sitting for maybe 2 weeks that they were sitting, and the return of the verdict, and the court will discharge them, tell them to, you can now leave this case. The rest of it will be whether the judge agree with the verdict. And if the judge, in the case of Judge Blamo, if he understood the verdict and agreed with it, then he will enter a judgment. So a verdict is different from a judgment. A verdict is what the jury return when they return from the room of deliberation, as to whether the defendant are guilty or not guilty. A judgment is an agreement with the verdict by the judge and entering final judgment, ordering the defendant acquitted. In this case, that's what Judge Blamo Dixon did. He received the verdict, and then after he thanked the jury and discharged them, apparently he decided to set a date for his judgment. And I think it was last week, Tuesday, like Tuesday or Wednesday last week. He entered a judgment upholding the verdict of not guilty and setting the defendant free. Now, let me go to the technical aspect of that. And let me say that why the Minister of Justice is in error.
Before we get to the Justice Minister, right? Mm-hmm. I want to know, what were their charges? Those of us who have no idea about these things, are they charged because they had drug? Is it illegal to bring drug? What were their charges, and what was the basis of their acquittal? Are they saying, okay, they continue even though there's cocaine, but it's not for you, or cocaine is not bad, you can carry wherever you want to? What really are they saying here? I don't.
So the defendants were charged with drug trafficking, okay, and money laundering, and the government had an indictment. In Liberia, the state is the plaintiff. The Republic of Liberia is the plaintiff. They did all of the investigation, gathered what they consider as evidence, and went to court for trial. The jury, in listening to all of the facts from the state side as well as the defendant side, concluded that the facts that were presented to them, how the container were brought to Liberia, how cocaine were in there. Mind you, this is a case that did not just include the four persons that were charged, the one Liberian and the 3 foreigners. There were Lebanese nationals, Jayweh and Sons. They run one of the major companies in Liberia. It is their container, one of their containers, that were released from Freeport, from the Freeport, and taken to Jayweh's yard. And it was there until the guys went and decided to start paying from 50,000, 100,000 to 1 million to be able to get the container out. The government of Liberia did not, the Ministry of Justice, did not include Jayweh and Son, or Jayweh and Company in this trial. Why? They know best. Mind you, the container in question is owned by Jayweh and Sons. The company that brought in the container is one of Jayweh's company. Not by the AJA, that's saying Jayweh guys. Yeah. No, the government of Liberia did not name or indict any one of those people. Why? The government knows best. So the jury, after the hearing of the facts, the jury decided that, oh, this case has not been proven. So we will vote that the 4 defendants, 1 Liberian, and the 3 foreigners are not guilty. And this will be our verdict. And the jury returned that type of verdict. The judge thanked them and ordered them discharged and set a day for his final judgment. Now, let me tell you what should have happened. Once the jury returned the verdict in the open court, the verdict of not guilty will be read by the clerk of court. When the verdict is read, if the state thought that the verdict was against the weight of the evidence that they produced, as the law requires, they must right there and then, after the verdict is read,
and that's an appeal.
Move the court for new trial on ground that the verdict is contrary to the weight of the evidence. Nothing like that was done by the government of Liberia. They sat down, they missed that opportunity. If you miss that opportunity, then the aspect of new trial to occur because the verdict is not consistent with the weight of the evidence produced. We gave the judge a room to set up a time to enter a final judgment. When the judge enters a final judgment in a criminal case, that's the end of the case. The government of Liberia cannot appeal if the judge finally enters a judgment in a criminal case in favor of the defendants. The defendants are considered legally as free people. So that Tabata, the minister talking about, I'm going to the Supreme Court to look for what? To get what at the Supreme Court?
And we'll come to that again. Let me know, because we got 12 jurors here. I know how are jurors picked in Liberia? And who are these people? Where they come from? What's the process? Councillor Anthony Jensen can start, and Councillor Jayweh can also.
Well, I'm aware that jurors are people of their peers and people who are in the different communities, unlike like America, where citizens are asked or citizens are written officially to provide jury service. In Liberia, that should be the same pattern. The government of Liberia should be able to write permanent citizens who are supposed to provide jury service. But I think in this case, most often people make the application. I don't know fully well how they do it right now. I haven't been in that country for years. But jury can be selected and they are asked to apply, and they're always in the corridor of the court waiting for cases. And by the time there's a case ongoing, the court accept these individuals, and then they are processed during the trial. And the different lawyers from the two parties, both defendants and plaintiff, they are allowed to ask all of the necessary questions to ensure that those jurors are rightly selected for jury service. Now, if you don't go through, that's a very serious process. And sometimes out of some of these questions that will come from either of the lawyers, the court can either deny individuals who are to serve. But if all those things go on well and they are selected, indeed is set for trial. In the process of this, the concern for Liberia has been that most often there are jury tampering. And that goes to the point of how were they selected in the first place. If you didn't select the caliber of individuals who should be credible, and you wait until the 12 men are selected and they sit on a case, you don't raise those necessary issues, and to trial ends and you want to raise issue of jury tampering, you must have had evidence to prove the contrary. Other than that, it just be like, raising unnecessary issues.
Councillor Jayweh, anything to add on this jury selection process? Who are these people? I wonder, they're going to sign no grand jury, low-file to take people from there. You know, some people who even may not even know what's going on with this case.
There are courts in those counties, so those courts also have cases similar or relating to jury trial. So you don't go to do. There are a lot of Liberians who are sitting in that place. Even all of those Liberians where they can be allowed to do jury service. I don't know how. Maybe Jayweh can speak more about that.
Right.
How
No,
it's done
what I
these
mean
days.
is because even people when the trial here, those people are not even watching TV because they don't want anything to influence them. So I would take
Yeah.
people far away from the media area so that they can have fresh perspective. But Councillor Jayweh, how these people are picked? What's the process like in Liberia?
So the law on jury selection requires that the court in which a case is pending, in this case, the drug trafficking and money laundering was pending in criminal court A. The judge will order the clerk to write either the superintendent of Muscle County. So let me go by and answer that you can't pick people from Sano, you can't pick people from Maryland, you can't pick people from Grand Juliet because the law requires that the jurors must be picked within the jurisdiction where that court is sitting. So you can only deal with Muscle County. So the clerk the judge will order the clerk to write the superintendent office to avail his office to assist the court to send, let's say the case you had 12 jurors, to send 24 individuals that the court will vet and that the lawyers on both sides, the government lawyers and the defense lawyer would choose from. The law is that the jury or members of the jury must be individual of the peer of the person being tried or people being tried.
What does that mean?
So if I am, say I am a master of law degree holder and charged with a crime in Liberia, you must bring people who are within my educational limit to be jurors, or at least minimum a bachelor degree, so that at the end of the day, they'll be able to understand the factual situation and the trial process in the entire case. But in Liberia, there's a problem. I practice law for about 33 years now in Liberia. Most jurors in Liberia are considered professional jurors. What do I mean? There are clerks of courts who may find means to bring their cousins, their brothers.
You muted yourself. Please unmute. All right, it's good now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You're good.
So I was saying clerks of court or judicial officer. In some cases, it is alleged that judges bring family members to be selected. And when the jurors, so they have the special, they have the trial jury. In order to select those people, there is a connection between the clerk of court or judicial officer and those being selected as jurors. They actually do not go through the rigmarole or the process rather to ensure that jurors are chosen the way the law provides. They bring in family members.
Because they're paying them, that's why?
They paid them $60. And when I was in active practice in Liberia, they were making like $60, but I think it's higher than that now. My understanding is that they are making like $150 per case. So for every time they sit as a jury, they may make my time when I'm actively there, was like $60. You get $60 at the end of the case. The government is responsible to transport them. The government is responsible to sequestrate them, keeping them apart from newspaper, television, all that kind of thing, so that they can be fair to listen to the trial. It doesn't really happen like that in Liberia in the judicial system. The jury trial, both the prosecutors and those who are defense lawyers, some of the defense lawyers and some of the prosecutors will tamper with the jury. So if the clerk brought in all of maybe about 7 persons from his community or relatives who are now selected as jury, and the judge sister-in-law sent some people, and they were also selected to have the 12 15 people, 12 to make the judgment. The rest will say that somebody's sick. They call those one alternative jurors. And when they get onto the court, who controls them? It is the Minister of Justice that is responsible to find place for them to stay. Government gave money to the Minister of Justice to ensure that the juror will stay there, be sequestrated. The government also gave ensure that the jurors are transported on a day-to-day basis. Who goes into the room of the jury during the time they are sitting? Who see the jury? Who speak with the jury? Not the clerk of court, not the judge, but the prosecutor. It can be county attorney and a bailiff assigned from the Ministry of Justice, assigned to the court. So when you're talking about tampering, the defendant is unable to reach into the room of the jury or the jurors. The Ministry of Justice has access to them because they're providing place for them to stay, because they're providing them food on a day-to-day basis. But because these people are not picked consistent with the process, because there's a lot of influence in how they are picked, they will make judgment based upon how much money is given to them. And so if you claim that during a trial, if like the Minister of Justice claimed that the jury might have been tampered with, you don't say that alone. You must, after the verdict is returned, you must file a motion for new trial, or you must file a bill of information asking the judge to investigate jury A, B, C, D to say these people are tampered with. Here are the evidence. If you do not do that, and the verdict is accepted, the jury members of the jury are thanked and discharged by the court. You lost that opportunity to be able to seek an investigation. The Supreme Court would never be able to help you because there is no trial below or evidence taken below to ensure that those three people that I just named on the jury receive bribe. It's a whole investigation process. But first is that the process to select the jury is so bad, so wrong, that tampering is very easy.
And tampering possibly can come from, because you're saying the Justice Minister access. So let me go to Attorney Jensen. So the Justice Minister now, the way he's in the paper, and we're going to come to what he said, is like, is he hearing this for the first time? Didn't he have that opportunity in the court to express what he's expressing now?
Well, firstly, we didn't know the strategy of the Minister of Justice, right? And I personally did not follow this case from the onset to the stage where the acquittal verdict has been rendered. And I'm sure the Justice Minister himself, I actually expect him and his team to get all of the strategy, the legal strategy as to how to proceed with this case. Now, I'm not sure that he is not aware or he doesn't have an evidence to raise these issues. Now, like Jayweh is saying, and I do not know whether he did not make any pronouncement in the court. Another issue that might come forth will be, how is he going to proceed with all of these public comment that is being made? Like I said, from the onset, I would believe very strongly that drugs or the individuals that are concerned with this case is not just Liberia alone. So what happened next? Are we going to say, well, because there was an acquittal and then that case is moot and no one can proceed further with? I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't definitely think so, because I believe that this has an international link, and those individuals, wherever they may be or may go, I think this is a case that is concerning to everybody. I'm even hearing like Washington is raising some serious issue right now about this. I'm reading that in the papers. So how can Liberia is not an island? There are international laws on drug trafficking. So some of the procedures that could be deployed by the Ministry of Justice, that's something that we can guess, but we wouldn't be able to conclude, sit here and say, well, they don't have a case. I wouldn't want to say that because, honestly, all of the facts are not known, and I don't think at this stage we will sit and say they don't have a right to proceed further with. And there's something Jayweh said. I'm not catching my eyes on that relative to judgment, whether the judgment of the court is not appealable. That's something that I know in the American system, the criminal cases like these can be appealed. So relative to Liberia, that's something that maybe he will have to expand on that further for our listening audience.
All right. So let's come to the Justice Minister, what he said, and then we're going to deal with that and see, whether he's hearing this for the first time. So Justice Minister Frank Musa Dean says the verdict clearly undermines the collective efforts of Liberia and its international coalition to clamp down on the illegal transit of illicit drugs. Minister Dean said that what is even more concerning and despicable is the fact that these kinds of verdicts only lend credence to the widely held international and local perception that the jury in Liberia is, not doing, that the jury, namely the courts, are inherently compromised, and it has again ignited the lingering debate of whether the judicial process should continue with the age-old judicial trial process. And listen to this one. The Justice Minister said the ruling has also brought Liberia to international ridicule. He's the chief prosecutor, right? So what happened?
Let me come. The Minister of Justice is playing politics. All what he wrote has nothing to do with the law. Let me be clear. In Liberia, we're not talking about America. In Liberia, when a criminal case is decided against the state, that ends the case. There is no appeal. I repeat, in Liberia, when a criminal case is decided against the state, a judgment like the judgment that says not guilty, the government of Liberia cannot appeal. There are two instances where the government of Liberia in a criminal case has a legal right to appeal. The first is when a motion of acquittal is filed and granted during a criminal trial. The Minister of Justice or the government of Liberia has the right to appeal. Let me tell you what I mean by a motion of acquittal. When the defendant when the state rather puts all of his witnesses, oral and written evidence on the stand and rest with their case, if the defendant finds out that the evidence produced during trial by the state is insufficient to find the defendant guilty, the counsel for defendant must move the court to grant his client a motion of acquittal. Free them. Don't even bother with going anywhere else. Your Honor, free all of the defendants because the government of Liberia has not produced sufficient evidence, both written and oral. If the judge agrees with that application and grants the judgment a motion for acquittal, then the state can appeal to the Supreme Court. The second aspect, and this is not one of those, there was no motion for acquittal filed by the defendant. They went straight on with trial. They produced the evidence, and then the court found the verdict was returned. The court found them not guilty. The second incident is when the indictment is read prior to the pleading of the defendants to the indictment, meaning the defendant, they have not been asked whether they are guilty or not guilty. And the defense counsel moved the court and said, Your Honor, I move that this indictment be quashed or dismissed and my client be set free. When the court grants that application, the government of Liberia may appeal. In the absence of these two legal requirements I just laid out, when trial is done by the government of Liberia, trial is completed by the defense counsel, and the case go to the jury, and verdict is returned, a judgment is entered. There's no right to appeal. The government of Liberia is done; it cannot appeal. So the minister just said talking about and make the international people to look down on us. You don't send children to the courtroom. Lawyers that go to the courtroom to represent the government of Liberia, if they are not influenced, they must be highly competent and capable lawyers who know the trial proceedings. And if you lose, you're done. So you cannot go to the Supreme Court. All of these things he's writing is to maybe make the international community believe that, in fact, what he's doing is putting the blame of not guilty on the court, when the blame to prove that the defendants are guilty is on the state, not on the court. So the evidence to prove that they are guilty.
But Jayweh, can I say something? Let us assume, and just from what we are reading, let us assume that the Justice Ministry did all they could to present all the best evidence that they had, so that these individuals could be found guilty. Right? Like, for example, there was a continuum that was cut. And I'm sure the fact that they said cocaine was in there, let us assume there were photos taken. And that we are hearing that there was communication that came from the LRA speaking to the factual circumstances of this case and for the content to be released. And how did, with all of these pieces of evidence, best evidence, I would think, if there are photos of the continuum, that cocaine. Now, I will hold my word to some extent, because I have not seen these photos, I have not seen the communication, but from what we are reading, if the Justice Ministry did all the could to present the best evidence, and yet the jurors came with not guilty verdict, that's the circumstances. Now, the issue I will agree with you is, what did the court do there and then? But the court did not act. That's what I said. We cannot just think that the Justice Ministry will sit and will not take all of the best actions. I don't know their legal strategy that they're going to deploy at this time. But what is important here is, with all of the legal technicality, with all of what is going on, that's a government that is being run, and we have international partner, international laws that will not allow drug traffickers to be released in the street. How that going to happen at this time around? The Justice Ministry should be able to be explaining to the media what they need to do, what is going to be the next step of action.
Anthony Jensen, I don't know whether he can do that, right? The Justice Minister, because what he's saying, is not any legal thing, right? It's just let's look at what he's saying. This thing, it undermines our collective efforts, is despicable, our judicial process, that why people say the courts are bad, right? Or if you have evidence that you presented that was not listened to, wouldn't the Justice Minister be talking those kind of things? But he's not talking evidence. He's not talking about, okay, these are the things. I don't know whether he's allowed to say, here's the evidence that we had, and they're telling me what. He's only saying, he's only using, intellectual words, not legal words, in my opinion.
Well, we don't know all of their strategy, and let's be careful on this. I really don't support the government in its entirety. I believe the government erred in the first place to even run the court. That's a situation in the first place that I felt, in my view, this is something that the government needed to carefully look at before even proceeding the court. That the Justice Minister, the executive branch of government, even the judiciary, that's what I said. That's an issue that borders not just the country, but every Liberian, every association to that of Liberia. Why do you think the U.S. ambassador is sitting over there, he's keeping his eyes on all of these things that are happening? Because they have vested interest. Now, for the country itself, you had a continual flow of cocaine, and you get such a situation just running the court before. I don't know the evidence that was produced from the prosecution side.
And the Justice Minister is not talking about evidence. He's talking about international, they're spoiling our name.
Yeah, I think the issue right now that they all, like the Jayweh said, we can be thinking about now, what happened next? I think that's what we all should be discussing now. What happened next? Huh?
Let me answer you what happened next.
Yeah, what happened next?
On the Liberian side, the matter is finished. That's the first thing. But because drug trafficking and money laundering constitute international crime, jurisdiction outside of Liberia has the right to arrest, indict, and prosecute those people. the four in question. So on our side, the Minister of Justice has messed up. The case is finished. They can
No. Jayweh, let me come in. I don't think now. This is what I say. I don't know the strategy of these people, but let me say it this way: let us assume the Justice Ministry or the security apparatus get in their possession evidence of quote unquote. Let me play that blind thought, right? That the George Blambo Nelson, that Blambo Dixon. Let us assume there's some piece of evidence that probably he may have been caught into some dealings, or let us assume that there are some pieces of evidence that may have caught that these people, the jurors and even some court officers, were caught into some bad dealings into this case. That would have been some other situation that the Justice Ministry could introduce some factors into this case. Other than that, on the merit and the trial itself, to some extent, I would agree with you. If nothing substantial that will signal fair play in this trial, that would be a problem for Liberia and even those Liberians that are out in and out of Liberia.
You know,
in the national community, that one I'm sure for that they're not going to let this case go down. And even some Liberians will suffer the pains of this.
I'm sorry for Liberia, and I regret our people going through all of this. But Liberia has a very bad and weak government.
That is true.
If the government meant to prosecute this case, let me go back and tell you something about what happened in Ellen Johnson's time. There was a Solicitor General called Michael Waking-Wright, former Justice, long-time trial judge. And later on, he was hired as Solicitor General of the Republic of Liberia at the Ministry of Justice. So the Solicitor General prosecute all cases. You heard Sifa talking about that. Has a lot of weight in how cases are tried in Liberia. Justice Wright said one time that cases at Ministry of Justice are not fairly prosecuted because the presidents of Liberia, and in particular Mrs. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, instructed him to prosecute some cases and not to prosecute some cases. So the president of Liberia is a non-lawyer unless you went to law school, you graduated from law school, and you have practiced law sufficiently to know your left hand from your right hand. You cannot be instructing the Minister of Justice to do anything when it comes to law.
But why should the Minister of Justice even allow that?
Oh, that's what happened. So I'm saying this to say that the Minister of Justice may have all of the evidence it needed to prosecute and find the four defendants guilty. First, answer yourself the question: Why did the Minister of Justice choose to leave out Abijade and company? Why were the 11 people who went to go who in which the container were found? Why were they not also indicted? Did the President of the Republic of Liberia instruct the Minister of Justice to go to court and play stupid? And then
that's a good question. That's a good question. But the thing I would say to you too now is, you as a lawyer, Councillor Dean, will he compromise his own integrity for this case?
Let me tell you something.
Let's assume that Lebanese were associated with this case, and he wanted to really present all of the piece of evidence to court. And executive court went to him and said, "Look, my man, this case, I have interest in it." Wouldn't be a reason for Councillor Dean to resign his position and keep his integrity?
It depends upon how much money you make when you're Minister of Justice.
Now that's a serious issue. They even talk about money.
A good lawyer would not take instruction from the executive branch, particularly when it has to do with legal issue. I will resign. But when you sit and protect your Minister of Justice position or your Solicitor General position,
right,
and decide to receive phone call, it is a violation of the law to receive phone call from the executive branch to ask you to go slow on the trial. In fact, it is a crime for the president to instruct the Minister of Justice to go cool or slow on the defendant. But in Liberia, people are interested in Councillor Jayweh, Minister of Justice. Councillor Jayweh, Minister of Finance. People are interested in all of these titles, that their integrity and respect for themselves will become of no use. They become enslaved to what the politician tell them. How would a lawyer who knows the law and has all of the evidence go to court in this kind of drug case and lose the case and begin to write something like, oh, this will make our country to be shame. The international people will say we are corrupt. Nonsense. You resign and get out of that. Why did it not? Why did it not? I'm going to legal part. Why did it not, when the verdict was returned, the Minister of Justice did not file a motion for new trial? Why they didn't do that? There's no record that they filed a motion for new trial. You know, when you decide, the thing the minister is saying in that letter is that what is referred to double jeopardy. The defendant cannot be acquitted by court. You arrest them for the same crime. You attempt to prosecute them. The only jurisdiction now that can prosecute those people, maybe it will be the U.S. Maybe it will be there were interstate travel of the drug. Any of those countries in which the continent travel to get to Liberia can assume jurisdiction and arrest them. But to say that, the national security people, they are out there trying to find them, they escort. He uses the wrong word. When a court releases a defendant, the defendant leaving the country, it doesn't constitute he fleeing the country. It means the defendant has the legal right to leave. Did the government mean to prosecute this case? If the question is yes, then was the minister tampered with or the prosecutor that were in the trial? Why did they not do all of the legal things that I just said?
All right. So my last question on this, so we can move to the next case. What happened to the drug? Is the container still there? These guys are being acquitted. Would they say, bring our container, let's go and take our cocaine? Or what happens?
You know how much worth of drug was brought in the country? 140 million.
Yeah.
Did you hear anything about the 40 million in this case? No. The indictment had nothing to do with 40 million. So where did they go? Did they pass through Liberia to go to Europe? Where did the 40 million drug go?
They say 100 million.
140 million.
The issue is, and I think
drugs.
Maybe
fine.
They say the
that is a very good question, right? Because even the jurors themselves, if the prosecuting team did not take the jurors to see the container, right, and say, look, appeal to file a motion with the court and allow the jurors to go and see the container and see the stack of cocaine and convince them so that all of the verdict that we're talking about today would not have been the direction.
Of course.
Now, the question we're asking you is very good. Where is the drugs? So if you acquitted these people, where are the drugs? So the question you ask, where's the drugs? If the drugs actually exist, it means you should not have acquitted those persons. Because it means it's real, the drugs really came in the country.
Attorney Jason, you're correct. The thing is, I say you are very correct. Did the governor of Liberia file a motion for the court to have the belief of the court officers to travel with a jury along with
whatever the container is,
and the defendant for fairness sake? Did they go to see whether the container were ever seen? No. Let me tell you something. This drug entered Liberia with higher up information, with higher up approval. You could not go through the Freeport of Monrovia with the amount of drug in question. And then the container is lifted is freed from the Freeport to Abidjan, one of its company warehouse. These are people who in trucking business will tell you, say, when you put all of the things into whatsoever you send into Liberia as a shipper, you have your bill of lading stating how many items in that thing. Did the government of Liberia produce a bill of lading? You know who they brought? They did not, even the Freeport police, the director of Freeport police were never brought. The people from LRA were never brought. Government brought people who may have not even known the thing. The catch there is that, as you said, the juror was be saying that these people are lying. Why are they not taking us to where the container is? Why are we not able to go in our presence to see how much drugs in the container? These are poor people, mind you, who basically will be working for $60 for that trial. If each of them receive $1,500, you think they will not enter a verdict? And $1,500 from the government of Liberia, not from the defendant, from the government of Liberia. If government officials were connected, The government will bribe the jury to enter a verdict that way. The government will also tell the minister to go slow, to not file a motion for new trial. I don't think Musa Din is a fool. I know Musa Din to be a good lawyer. Why did he not do all of those things?
Well, the issue now, we thank him, and this is something that I personally think that the Ministry of Justice, I wouldn't sit there and just inconclusively think that they don't have any strategy to proceed further. This individual could still be in the country, even though we're hearing that they have.
Anthony Jensen, who built the fence after the guinea pig finished eating the rice? The trial is over. The people left. You say, I'm acquitted.
Look, the issue here, that's what we are saying, right? You are aware, and Councillor Jayweh himself has said it here, that look, this is a case that is not limited to Liberia alone.
Right.
This is a case that had international flavor.
So what could the strategy be here? That okay,
the strategy would be, let us assume those individuals are staying in the country. Even to hear, that's another thing. To hear that those guys are already left the country.
They left. So what would be the strategy? Let them.
The strategy one could be, look, I'm sure that, like, for example, the American ambassador is not going to come public on this thing, but I know they are very much aware about this thing. They are deeply involved in this thing. I'm sure other international partners close to Liberia, they are very well aware of this thing, and they're concerned about this. So then, what's going to happen next? You don't think there is an Interpol that could claim on those individuals? And even those government officials, let's assume that George Blambo Dixon is deeply involved in some way, somehow about this case. Don't you think he can also suffer latches as a result of decision?
Let's forget the international.
Don't you think that the jurors that were over there, the investigation can still go on, and that because we are hearing that one of the jurors did not agree, right? So that in itself could signal some other decisions.
No, so let me
if Liberia case is closed at that level, I am saying there must be.
Saying, what would be Musa Din's strategy to say, okay, the strategy is to put it on the international community to do what we but for a trial in Liberia, what would that strategy be?
No, there's not just you are asking questions as to where is the cocaine. Let us assume there's actually 100 million worth of cocaine in Liberia. Where is it? Is it being spread around for our children to be destroyed?
No.
Is that what this verdict is telling us? Or because this case has ended, so everything is like that, we should not discuss about container being any longer? You still asking the question, right? Where is the container? Is that a drugs?
Let me answer the question.
Except we hearing, just a minute, Joey. Except we are hearing that in actuality, there is no cocaine. The $100 million drug is a fake story. There's nothing real about it. Then, in my view, the case will rest at this point. Other than that, Councillor Dean has all of the government resources to still have those people and allow international. I'm told that there's an Interpol, a drug trafficking Interpol that is working along with the Liberian government. I don't know how true that is, but let's assume that is true. International law can be deployed, and at the end of the day, those guys can be arrested and taken to some other jurisdiction.
Oh yeah,
thank you, Councillor Jayweh. Please, 1 minute, and then we can move to the next case.
So where is the drug? The drug were in the possession of the government of Liberia, so the government of Liberia should have the drug while they were prosecuting.
I agree. The government of Liberia should have the drug.
Built on the drug that were found. It was not in the defendant custody. The drug remained in the Ministry of Justice confined and custody. So if you're asking where is it now, the Minister of Justice should tell us where is the drug. After the defendant lost the case, they talked about the 200,000, but nobody talking about the 100,000. I mean, $1 million. $100 million worth of drug. It's in the hands of the government of Liberia. Did they brand it? Did they destroy it? What did they do with it? So the government should say yes. Where the drug is.
Government, if you are listening, where's the drugs? All right, we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll look at Executive Order number 117, the one that says the Code of Conduct said if you want to contest the 2023 election, you should resign 1 month. First, it was 2 years. They amended it and brought it down to 1 year. Now, President Weah, nobody listened to it until President Weah said, if you in my government, you want to run, resign before April. And so from April to October, that's now 1 year. The case went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, you're moved from there, man. the president is trying to help us here. But we'll look into that when we come back. Welcome back to FOL Justice Forum. We have one more case to talk about. That is the executive order from the president. But this election season, let's listen to Ente Mieda talking about elections and voting. If you are happy with the way things are, register to vote. If you are not happy with the way things are, you better register to vote because your vote is your power. That's from the legendary Mianta family. Anthony Jensen, Councillor Jayweh, we have something called the Code of Conduct. And it says, any minister, deputy minister, director general, managing director, and superintendent appointed by the president pursuant to Article 56A of the Constitution, and a managing director appointed by a board of directors who desires to contest for public elective office shall resign said post at least 2 years prior to the date of such public elections. Okay, later on that was amended. So the amendment reduced the resignation period from 2 years for officials appointed at the pleasure of the president and 3 years for officials with tenure to 1. So meaning since the elections is in October, so from October of 2022, if you want to run, then you resign. That did not happen. It happened after April or around April. That's the executive order. So what's happening here? What is this code of conduct? Is it enforceable? Is it a law? Should we go by it or not? Or is it optional? Yeah, this is it, but we'd like it, or if we don't like it, let's leave it. And then the president coming in now to do an executive order, is that constitutional? Or does that help us? Don't forget, the case went to the Supreme Court because the economic freedom fighters went there with the case, and the Supreme Court said no. So the story is the Supreme Court has denied a request from the EFFL to halt the enforcement of President Judge Weah's Executive Order number 117, which called for the resignation of the government of Liberia officials desiring to contest. Anthony Jensen, is the Code of Conduct law, and should we live by what happened? Why we didn't see people resigning until the president have to intervene?
Well, the president executive order is not and void in my view, and that the fact that there is a statute That's the wordings of the statute should be respected by the president and all persons within the Republic of Liberia. If a code of conduct that was passed by the national legislature, that is law, it was passed and
Signed into law.
signed into law and printed into handbill, that's a piece of law in the country. For even George Weah himself to lead the code of conduct and issue an executive order, send out a signal that even the legal officer in the office of the president did not do justice, not just to the president, but to the country as a whole. Now, those individuals who are resigning on the basis of the president says it and not what the law says, it should be expected that someone within the Republic of Liberia, like the EFFL, I respect them, to even challenge such a decision and go before the Supreme Court. That was one of the best things to do, to ask the court to make a decision. Because an executive order has a lifespan of 1 year. Besides that, there's a code of conduct that have given directive as to what needs to happen. The law says in 2 years' time, you must have resigned your position. And the president comes on and says, no, even though there's a law, but I am the chief executive. I am the one that's supposed to speak. I'm the one that's supposed to direct my people what to do. Then we ask the question, where is the country going? Is it a country respected of laws or respected of person like George Weah? In my view, even the election commission, should they honor individuals, will they hold individuals on the basis of the executive order or on the basis of the code of conduct? I know they all will go on George Weah when. If George Weah executive order is in violation of the code of conduct, the National Election Commission herself will be in serious error. But that's what the country is right now. But just to close on this is a clear matter. I don't think we need to even waste our time on this. The executive order cannot supersede the code of conduct. The code of conduct voice of the representative and senator, including the president himself. He signed the code of conduct before the printing the handbill. So he's even ignoring his own voice in that code of conduct and doing something else that is contrary from the practice and procedure of running a government.
My question to you here is, this case went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says, it said, hey, the court applauds the president's executive order since it protects the integrity of the October 10 polls. So it said the executive order is intends to create a plain and level field to prevent Liberia's competitive politics from unfair and undue advantages in which public officials in charge of public finances, it continues, in charge could be preferred by voters over others in the elections process. So the chief judge, I mean, the Supreme Court is explaining the executive order. I mean,
but this is an issue, Jara. The reason why we sit here to discuss these matters is not to hear the Supreme Court. The reason why I went to law school is to study cases, look at the facts, and raise a genuine argument to make a perfect analysis and reach a recommendation and conclusion. So in this fight, the Supreme Court herself should be respected of the law. The code of conduct that was signed by all the representatives and senators from around the country, including the president himself. And the court will look at that and say, well, you know, even though this is a decision we're taking, I, as a person who looking at this case, I will give you my mind on what this case is all about and what needed to be done. And then you can make a decision as to, well, the Supreme Court is right, George Weah is right, the representative senators are right, and where the country will go from there, we will know from that. But I cannot sit there and tell you, see, the court was right on this matter of this. There's a code of conduct, right? The code of conduct was printed in the handbill. So if that happens, everybody should be respected of the code of conduct, including the judicial branch of government. Contrary from that, I just feel it's bad governance.
My last question before I go to Councillor Jayweh is, this thing, people should resign around October. They didn't do that until the president. Why everybody sat down, and even up to now with the president's executive order, everybody is still playing alone. Uh, Political parties are going into the elections, and everything is like it's okay. What's going on?
You know what, Jad? There's something serious happening in Liberia, and most of us are not. Liberia is like I listened to who's this guy? Okay, I forgot his name. But this is the issue I want to say. Liberia is at a stage where this election, a serious decision is not made in this election. Liberia is retrogressing. And I can say here, there is one person in this race. If Liberia missed that opportunity, I don't know where Liberia will go from here. Because we can see all the people that are running around with political parties, with political leaders, and all of those situations. There's a lot serious thing going to happen to Liberia. People now is respecting education any longer. We all are here causing all of the noise all around the place and running around because if John Brown went wrong and we are affiliating with that party, we will not speak the wrong about John Brown. But as long as sin wrong is committed by another person, Peter Paul with another group, then we go after that person. That's the kind of society Liberia is today. People are not going for what is right. Like you're talking about the Supreme Court, right? Supreme Court should know, well, Jayweh executive order, the code of conduct, which side should we go? What rationale are they using to say the executive order is supreme over the code of conduct? I do not understand. Maybe Jayweh can give his better analysis on that. But my view is, look, I wouldn't take that for being real, in supporting what those individuals do. Whether individuals themselves, political parties are all around the place. Why are they saying? They themselves, why are they saying? All of the political parties, 24 political parties, why are they saying? There is no single statement that have come from any of those individuals that say, well, this is our position. I think what, Liberty Party, right? Now, I don't want to take out people say, oh, you're supporting this group of people. No. No, it was what? Alexander Cummings' group. I think they were raising this very same issue. But whatever happens now is up to Liberians to make that decision as to whether they will maintain the same government or they will have a different government as to how far this country will go.
All right. Councillor Jayweh.
Yes.
I put it into three forms. I said the code of conduct, the executive order number 117, and the Supreme Court decision. What's going on here?
So I think let's start with the role or the legal responsibility of the three branches of government. Under the doctrine of separation of power, the legislature, Liberia legislature, is responsible to make the law, make all laws, and not executive order. The laws the legislature Liberia makes is considered as a statute when signed into law by the president.
Right.
Then the executive, which is the second branch of government, is entrusted solely with the responsibility to enforce the law, judgments, ordinances, regulations, and all of that. Then thirdly, the judiciary, under the same doctrine of separation of power, is responsible to interpret the law and say what the law is. That's why you can hear some lawyer file a petition for declaratory judgment, asking the court to explain the aspect of this law. If you look at the structure of the legal system in Liberia, or the laws that Liberia relies on, locally the statute takes precedent or trumps administrative regulations. The statute trumps, or a statute trumps an executive order. So you were asking, I think Attorney Jason asked a question. He does not know who advising the president legally. The president is advised by his friend, Ajiba Bonat, who is the legal advisor to the president. Ajiba Bonat is not a trial lawyer. He knows nothing about the courtroom. Or perhaps Ajiba Bonat may have gotten some assistance from outside. I understand Councilor Vani Sherman can also advise the president. But advising the president on what? They say what he wishes to hear or told that which the law provides. Mr. President, you cannot write an executive order that you think it trumps a statute because the statute takes precedent. It's higher than your executive order.
Right.
So you cannot go ahead and issue such an executive order. In fact, it reduces you to a laughing stock. You are a fun box because you are the same president who signed. It doesn't mean we have signed this. It was signed by President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. But the president must, every president that comes after other president must respect what our president has done. So you cannot write an executive order thinking that it will override what the law requires, resign 1 year prior to you running for election. So legally, the executive order is null and void with no legal effect. But in the judgment you just read, is this matter went to the justice in chambers. Justice, the newer justice on the Supreme Court, Yami Bese Cesar, is the justice that was just commissioned, went through confirmation, commission, and placed on the Supreme Court. Look, this justice said he entered the Supreme Court. I am taken aback that he writes political decision, not law. If a justice right to say, oh, you know, the executive order is meant for everybody to enjoy fairness, that's the law? Or that's politics?
And I thought that what the code of conduct supposed to do.
I think maybe what is going on in Liberia, because people are being murdered in an extrajudicial basis, judges are afraid to make decisions against the executive branch of government.
I would differ with you, Councilor.
I'm not saying it's true, but I'm saying that maybe they're afraid. But all the other thing I need to go by this particular justice, Justice Weah, when he was nominated and going through confirmation, I watched his video. The justice said, I must thank Dr. Weah. Nothing wrong with thanking President Weah for appointing you. But you have just said to the public that you are incompetent to sit on that court when you make such a political statement to say that I, Councilor Jayweh, appointed by President Weah, must thank Dr. Weah. What is that? I thank President Weah for my preferment. That's enough. To start making the political statement, Dr. Weah, and since he entered the Supreme Court and since he been in chambers, all of his decisions are political, not legal.
Right, and let's read again what he said. He said, the fact is that the amended Code of Conduct of 2022 has aids, cannot compel public officials who intend to contest the October 10 election to resign from office before participating in the election. The president has taken additional measures to protect the integrity of the process, which the court must applaud.
Can you imagine that? You read that thing, you really understand what it means?
This justice was...
You must applaud the president by taking extra measures. The president and the wisdom of the legislature, which one should be applauded?
You know, is interesting.
It doesn't sound to reason. That cannot even be a legal decision.
No,
I was almost to differ with Jayweh. But if you look at that thing keenly, you see the emptiness of that petition.
The justice.
Do we applaud Weah for them respecting the statute?
Yeah.
Is that what the justice is saying?
The justice is like...
It's a shame.
Is like a young Liberian who goes to law school and after his graduation believes that he's still not a lawyer after his graduation and must go back and tell the dean, thank you for graduating me. Even though you're studying in law school by yourself, may all of your grades and graduated, you are not admitted to the bar, but you must go back to the dean of the law school and say, Dean, I graduated because of you. That's what the justice. This is what the justice saying. This justice made a decision in the what you call it, the Birmingham, Bapulu, and Cape Mount Western Cluster case.
Yeah.
Read that decision. You will see nothing there that has to do with law. You will see everything that is done with appeasement. Quite clearly, appeasing the president Weah for designating me and appointing me. Look, if I'm in the House of Representatives or in the Senate, in the House of Representatives, I will file an impeachment proceeding against this guy. But anybody read any international body read this kind of writing?
Right.
What's happening? Don't we think that the U.S. government reads this opinion?
Sure, they do.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is FOL Justice Forum, and we are talking about the defendants in the $100 million drug case that were acquitted, and also President George Weah's executive number 117, which goes against the code of conduct. I think it's section 5.2 or so. If you want to join the conversation, please call 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403#. And I was asking the question about what everybody's doing. Why everybody's sitting down just waiting and really thinking if all these things are happening. We are looking at Christmas Eve. Okay? Things like absentee ballot, out of country voting, all these things, now the code of conduct, these things are happening. And we are still going to election thinking that something miraculous will happen.
You know, the opposition in Liberia is pretty weak. The opposition communist group, Weah is a ruling party. The United Party, Buakai, who claim to be the first, two major parties. They are contesting against one another. When coming through one day, United Party will go through the other day. Or they are now looking at the importance and the effect, the after effect of all of these wrongs that have been committed. In other words, why is it you don't need to be in a collaboration for the opposition to be able to form a coalition with the EFFL to be able to contest the law? When in 2017, when Bronskin laws may so rest in peace in the Supreme, when he got ready to file a suit, he filed a lawsuit as a Liberty Party chair, the political leader at the time. Unity Party filed a motion to intervene and join. I think there was another party that also joined because the issue affects the entire Republic of Liberia, not just EFFL, the EFFL. It does not affect the whole country. So if the president to start with did not declare his asset that somebody can see, why would he tell people 6 months down the road for them to resign? They will resign. Do they wish to resign, or do they wish to use government card to go campaign? They will do that because nothing else happening.
Here's a question here, and I was going to ask that, but Siata is asking. So with this whole idea of resigning, right? Mm-hmm. What if they are picking a vice presidential running mate? So the way like Jeremiah Kun is picked to be the running mate of VP Buakai or Mr. Buakai, is he supposed to resign too? What does the law say?
The code of conduct does not impact legislatures.
Okay.
You go by and say
that's a very big issue, Jar. And I think Liberians should be looking at issues like that. Mm-hmm. Because you wouldn't want to waste state resources. If Jeremiah Kun, Yombly, or whoever senator that is named to be a vice running mate in this election, that person needs to resign. It's a choice to accept a nomination. Because after election, assuming that party wins election, then that seat becomes automatically vacant. And then you're going to use state resources to conduct a by-election. So Liberia being where it is, if you want to be a vice president, you are having a senatorial position. There are 5 million persons Liberians, some of whom are well educated and prepared to serve in government. There are equal opportunity. The Constitution calls for equal opportunities. So if you want to take one opportunity, leave the other for the other person. Now, the fact that the lawmakers themselves will not address this issue and citizens of political parties are not questioning these matters, we want to discuss it and see which government will come into being that will begin to look at some of these issues. Why should you be playing a trump card and say, well, if I lose this, I will hold on to my position. If I win, well, then the Liberian government can go and look for somebody to come and occupy that position.
So in this case, I mean, we say the code of conduct because they say those appointed by the president, right?
Yes.
That's what the code of conduct addressing. So in this case, if a minister is picked, has running mate, that minister has to resign.
Yes.
But
not necessarily running mate. Not necessarily running mate. The fact that they want to contest,
yeah, correct.
In a position, they have to resign.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's already happening. Okay. But if you pick someone has running mate, say, well, I didn't ask for this. Does he have to resign? He or she have to resign as well? I think the answer is yes.
I don't think the code of conduct addresses that.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I think, and that the legislature made the law just like the pension law. The legislature made a law to excuse themselves. Because, as he said, if you go with Honorable Boaka and the Boaka team wins, you are sure that you win, that you're vice president. But it shouldn't be that way because not only does it sucks out national resources for by-election, all of that.
Right. And the intent of the code of conduct for ministers, the same apply to legislators. They say because we don't want you to use state resources.
Yeah, they should, but they will not.
The intent, right? I agree with the intent. Yeah.
The intent will be that, but the matter has to be first taken to court for the court to interpret it and say it will apply.
The court are making decision against the code of conduct.
No, but the thing is, and that's what I'm coming to. The thing is, because the justices and chief justice and other people on the Supreme Court may have political interest. Like during the Ellen Johnson's lifetime, there was, I think, 3 cases that went to the Supreme Court. There was a lady from Banga who was superintendent at the time. I forgot her name, but she was superintendent at the time. She wanted to run, I think, as a senator of Bong County. Her name will come to me. She was a very popular senator. Superintendent. Then there was a guy who is a member of the CDC who was working at the post office as assistant minister. He did not resign. The matter traveled to the Supreme Court at the time with Ellen Johnson's leave. And the Supreme Court ruled that the code of conduct says you should resign. You don't resign, you cannot run in district. In Lookington, at district what? 16? Lookington, I don't know what district that, but he lives in Lookington. And then finally, other people wanted to run. And then the matter was taken to the Supreme Court for a third time. The Supreme Court said everybody can run. So the thing is, Liberia is backward as it is and underdeveloped because most of the educated, so-called educated people who are in government, who basically are responsible to interpret and ensure that the law is enforced, are abusing the very law.
Right.
No, not for me. It doesn't apply to me because I'm a senator. But you work in government. You got government card. They're giving you scratch card to make phone call. Irresponsible business. People getting scratch card. Government pay for scratch card for government official, representative, and senator to make phone call. You ever heard that?
No. let me bring in our first caller because I have other questions to ask. If people and my question, start thinking about it. That you have in this ticket and this kind of little different, but people are saying, let's say we have a ticket. I'm president, then I have a vice president. After I'm certificated, what if I'm incapacitated and I can't run? Does my vice president take over all those things? But Think about that. Let me bring in our first caller here, and that's Pape Flomo. Pape Flomo, you are live. Hello, Pape Flomo. You are live. Go ahead, sir. All right. We wait for Pape Flomo. What do you think?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead, Pape Flomo. You are live.
Yes, I'm calling from from Massachusetts. I just want to make reference to what one of your panelists said. Especially the guy at the bottom. I just forgot his name because the name has disappeared from the screen. So I'm sorry that I can't. How you call it?
I'm Jensen, right?
Is Attorney Jensen?
Okay, Attorney Jensen said something. I have followed a lot of democracies around the world, especially in West Africa. He said something which I want to say, contrary to what he said. When an individual is chosen as, especially a senator or a representative, including Nigeria, Ghana, United States, and other democracies in West Africa, even all around the world, when a senator or a representative is chosen as vice president, they do not need to resign. What happens is that if you lose the election, you go right back to serving as senator or representative. Mm-hmm. But if you win the election, then there's a by-election to fill that space. So the idea that if you are chosen as a senator or representative, if you are chosen as a vice, as a running mate to a presidential candidate, that you must resign, that is not the case. Your slot remains open. You run for the vice presidential position. If you win, then there's a by-election. But if you lose, you go right back and fill your position. That is what it is in every democracy that I follow in West Africa and around the world, and even in the United States. So I just wanted to say that. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for your time.
Can I make a short comment on that? Yeah. There are reasons why people hypothesize. There are reasons why people look at issues and decide to make analysis and recommendations. It is often said that we must read the old books and just live by it continuously. We have said Liberia being what it is with limited resources, and I give you a clear example. James Jensen is a senator. He occupies a serious position in government. He's being named as a running mate to a presidential candidate. He's holding on to a senatorial, even when there is campaign time. Jensen is not going to be serving his people. When there are legislative discussions, he will not be there because he's going to be campaigning. Yet you are saying he must set what is happening in America, what is happening around the world. The rationale is what I'm discussing here.
Thank you.
Do you have money to say, well, okay, when Jeremiah Kun, when Boakai wins, he goes with Boakai, and then the Liberian government finds money to run a by-election? Isn't that possible? Is that a good sense for everyone to rethink sometimes? There's something we call false notion. People live by those things. And sometimes there's something, people keep doing one thing over and over. Sometimes a government will take a single idea or thought from somebody and legislate it and change the situation around and better the society or better the community. So that's the basis of our discussion. Sometimes, like for example, Jayweh says something about trial code and all those things.
Let me bring in the last caller, then we can.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so they don't wait too long on the line. Darling Warwood, darling, you're live.
Yeah, so I just want to draw a contrast between executive officials, those that are appointed by the president, and that of the lawmakers. So the fundamental reason for which that code of conduct will affect only executive officials is because they control budget, they control government equipment. And so if you got, say for example, Samuel Cllr running for a senatorial position, and he remains as finance minister, he's not going to take money from his pocket to run his campaign. He's not going to take his personal car to run his campaign. He's going to use the properties of finance ministry. So that is the reason why the code of conduct came about. Now, can you say the same for lawmakers? No. Lawmakers, for example, Yeke Koluba. Yeke Koluba does not control any budget. Yeke Koluba does not have a free or card that is government. No.
They approve the budget though.
You know how many in the budget for those people?
They approve the budget, I agree. But are you saying that they're going to put money in the budget to run their own campaign?
They
added 50,000
each.
Yeah, but who signed that budget into law?
Oh,
That's what I'm saying. They pass it.
Look at that.
So
all right.
You can't blame the legislature.
No, it's not blame.
Putting 50,000 each in the budget. You can't blame it. The president should have vetoed that. In fact, that is not even up for debate. Like we said, everybody is that's pure corruption. So we never. Actually, like let me go back and not lose my thought.
Okay, sir.
So the reason why the code of conduct affects folks within the executive is because they control budget, they control equipment, fleet of equipment, not one, not two, and they control budget. So you can say the same for that's a holding everything constant. In a better world, not the war of Liberia. In a better world, executive people the ministers and deputies and directors, they control budget and they control equipment. Legislatures, no, they don't. So that's the reason why the code of conduct, I think, it should really affect folks within the executive and not folks who are elected by the people. Elected officials should not be free by any law if they decide to contest for another position or somebody take them up to be their running mate or whatsoever. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I mean, if left with me, if everything is working perfectly, said nobody's supposed to resign. People should live by the law, right? If you own the clock, you can go do election. You'll be fired. If you have resources, you can divert them. You shouldn't resign before you do what is right, before you uphold the duties. But that's another story.
Let me add, the two callers seem to present the fake what
hypothesis
scenario
our discussion
proposition that this position is for Jeremiah Kund. You keep it, let's keep it. Go to be
right.
if he doesn't win.
When you lose, you can't take a position.
This is the kind of idea that Liberians have, and the country will not improve because he says that the code of conduct for only executive people because they are controlling budget. How about the assistant minister try to action to resign? What budget he controls in the ministry? The legislature you're talking about, as you said, Mr. Ja, are they not putting money in the budget so that they can call it office improvement, whatsoever it is? Are they not using government vehicle to run from place to place? In fact, it's the government, it's the people of the Republic of Liberia not paying all of these people, including the executive officers. The executive.
Before Chima went to Maryland the few times, he displayed just what Prince Johnson said. They printed the money is in their possession. He had the money placed on the table, brand new money.
Yeah.
Now, when the media reported it, he comes by, he said, well, you were not doing that, you were not doing that. So the issue of money, if that's the case, forget it. Those people get money over to run that campaign.
It will improve Liberia. Will be willing to look at things realistically, analyze them, and determine the benefit to the people. Can you imagine grown women and men in the House of Representatives and Senate are receiving money for a scratch card? To call your wife in America, you need scratch card. Can you buy your own scratch card?
Right. All right.
Benefit.
Let's come to my question now. Being incapacitated as a candidate, what happens? Does your party replace you, and when? What is the deadline? After election, before election, after certification, before certification? What happens?
Anyway, I think the only sticker issue we can discuss in there is let's assume election was held and the result was called like on the 10th of October, and election results is announced probably like the 25th before inauguration, and something happens. But whatever the case is, the fact that election result is being announced, the portion of the section of the Constitution that says when the president dies or is incapacitated, the vice president take office will definitely apply to the vice president. And this is why, in a very critical sense, people should be looking at someone who is capable, that is a candidate, and that is a vice presidential candidate. So that in the event of any of those situations, you will have someone capable that will take over the country. Other than that, you're going to be causing that you cannot circumvent the Constitution. You cannot say, "Oh, the person not fit for president." You know, whoever that is being named to be a running mate in the event of anything that makes the president incapacitated, the vice president automatically take the matter.
But before election, the party can decide, say, okay, our guy is not well, we're sending somebody else.
At this stage, I think is incumbent upon party officials, executive committees of parties to make those decisions.
Right. I mean, after certification by the NEC, what happens?
After certification, they are named already, so the party will have no voice on that.
Right. So you are named, and then something happens. The party can still come back and say, well, something happened to our candidate, and so we are replacing the candidate. I think that should be allowed.
I think the issue with looking, no, I think there's a low stick. Maybe Jayweh can help in that. At the point between the point of certification and election itself, if something happens in that period, that's a low critical situation in there, which I will be careful in discussing that, right? Because at that time, election is not held yet.
Right.
Even though the person that's been certificated has died, then you have to get a president and vice running mate. So what happened in that period? I think the executive committees of those parties will have to play a major role.
Right, I think so. Councillor Jayweh, let's end with that. You are muted. Unmute yourself, please.
I don't know why you're in darkness. People are saying darkness, Jayweh.
In Pittsville, current when?
Oh, in Pittsville,
No, I'm in Colorado, but the sun is in my eye.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So nobody wants to die, but people have to die.
Right.
The political parties in the scenario that you named should have that written into the Constitution and file such Constitution with the National Election Commission.
Right.
So that it does not become an issue, because this can happen. What you just said can happen.
Right.
And so with the constitution of every political party having such a clause or a paragraph in there or a section in there that addresses that issue, because the Constitution doesn't address that. It addresses after election, prior to inauguration or inauguration. But the Constitution of the political parties should have something like that. Of all the political parties, should have something like that. But because the Liberian political parties are used to vesting their interest in putting all of their trust into one old person or somebody who's been around for a hell of a long time. And if you notice, the standard bearer of all of our political parties is self-appointed. They want to go to convention.
Right. That's a serious issue. You're right.
Our standard bearer. You cannot, if you try to contest again, starting from Mrs. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, there was a guy called Thompson in the Unity Party who had filed his paper and wanted to contest. Everybody, including the political party official, the executive committee, they called Thompson once. I said, no, our standard bearer is Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. The same thing with Joseph Walker. There's no other person that ever contested to be standard bearer for that. But what you're saying is that the possibility exists so that the law should be able to address that. The Constitution of the political party should address that. Would they do it? I will tell you no, because they will say I will not die. I'm going through everything. I cannot put anything there that would make the people to select anything. Even in the Councillor Bronsky, who was a lawyer, in his the Liberty Party the Liberty Party never had such a clause or paragraph.
No succession plan.
No, they don't. They don't, because they believe even if the guy is 78 or even 80 years of age, God will keep him there until he can finish the presidency.
Right. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Really, I think we had a good time discussing this. Let's wrap it up. And if there's any other issue that come up, I know where to find you.
Well, let me begin and close. I want to thank your station, Focus to be able to bring us in to discuss the critical issues and help our people to understand. I also want to ask Liberians to please take us some time and pay real attention to these kind of critical issues that focus on Liberia. Justice Forum is bringing to you. Watch it, listen to it. It will help you because there are things that lawyers will be saying that you may take for granted, and you may get to have a clearer mind instead of making political decisions. You make decisions and say, this is what the lawyer said, and this is what the law is. Thank you, and I say goodbye.
Thank you. Attorney Jensen.
Well, Councillor Jayweh, thank you for the expressions and the discussion. And to you, Daniel Jai, we want to say thank you for inviting us. To our audience, we want to say thanks for all of the comments, the call, and what have you. There's one, Joe B. He's asking question, how did I become a lawyer, right? Or a legal expert in his opinion. Well, most of the time, for some of us, I don't see myself as an expert. One thing I can't take from people is that I went to law school and I was not someone who was taking copybook and wanting to spy before you become who you want to be. So because of that, the little I can do it. Normally, sometimes you think what Jayweh says something about trial ending a verdict, coming out of the judge making a decision to be final at the lower of the court. But there's something we try to do even when I'm in master's school, is that you look at judges' decisions, you look at statute, you look at facts, and you definitely will have to see whether you can raise an issue and have a discourse that can bring new ideas into the legal practice. Now, as Joe was discussing that law, as soon as I leave from here, I'm going to also research that, because some of those things, sometimes people dwell on. Like in the voice of Justice Cllr, he says, lawyers sometimes they don't want to read, they don't want to raise critical issues to make them to rethink and make more research, and others sometimes make a decision for statute to be amended. So as a result, we just take everything as it is. Like those guys say, well, there's a different, the people executive should do that because of budget and all those things. So you narrow your mind to that mindset. Even the thing we say, you don't want to accept it, you don't want to see sense in it, and you close yourself up. That is not how society is run. Today, we find other people who are using their minds to make changes. We are discussing about artificial intelligence. It wasn't just by sitting down and fold your hands and see those things not happening. So, Liberians, we want other people to start thinking. We don't say this, we don't come in this program because we want to boast. No, that's not the reason for someone coming up here. I have other things to do. So the important thing, when issues are raised yourself, go and this time is easy. Those of you who like spying, it's easier this day. Get to your AI, just put in questions and you will get answers coming for you. And you make your own decisions from there. Except you don't know how to ask the best of questions, that you don't get good result. So in short, Jay, we want to say thank you to our audience. We appreciate the comment. And like the Joe B, maybe let's talk more. All right, we want Liberia to be better. That's why we're discussing these issues. We don't come here because we want bluff and want to say something to people. We want Liberia, and the issue being raised, it borders elections. If you don't have those issues resolved, Liberia could be chaotic sometimes. There'll be serious disagreement. We don't want our country to be like that. The country we're setting, the people here, the leaders here, they're taking everything serious. We want our people back to take it serious. That's why we're discussing these issues. Once again, I want to say thanks, Daniel, for inviting me, and Jayweh, I want to say thanks for sharing the platform with me. It was a pleasure. Anytime I feel free to be here and discuss any issue that borders Liberia or any part of the world.
Thank you, Attorney Jensen, especially for the short notice, and you were able to be very flexible to kind of really appreciate it. Thank you, Councillor Jayweh, always providing us. And sometimes Councillor Jayweh will hit me and say, hey, have you read this? This is what's going on. I say, well, Councillor, let's talk about it. Because even though I'm a very smart guy, but I don't know the law. So, and most of us, we kind of talk these things based on our own maybe interest, political position, or what we think. But I always like to hear from the lawyers. And also, their word not Bible, right? You can challenge them. You can read and come with your question and challenge them. But we don't want you to come and denigrate anybody and say, oh, what kind of school you went to and all that. Let's be very respectful of one another. These people, they volunteer their time and their expertise to come and talk these things. So, and we ourselves, we are counting on your support. Criticism is good, but let's just be respectful and voice out these things to one another. We are all Liberians. We always want to remind ourselves, and that's why we always end with that song. Want to thank you all for coming. Want to thank and appreciate our callers, our listeners, our viewers, and even those who will watch later. Until then, my name is Dennis Yah saying, have a good and godly night. We are all Liberians.
We are Liberians.